Oh no. Okay. Jacob's at work. All right. Okay. So, hello everyone. It's the 53rd podcast. A little off hours, off day today. I figured I wanted to get something up and rolling though because we've had a bit of downloads, I guess, in the recent couple days, couple weeks. I think it's been one person who's just been like listening to the podcast material, or maybe it's a couple of people, I don't actually know. But anyways, very thankful about that. I haven't actually gotten content out in a while. I've been meaning to do this one though because I've had a couple of events happen in my personal life, so I figured I'd get something out there eventually. Well, actually, I guess first I should be apologizing because I think I made the promise 2 weeks ago that I would I would actually have a podcast that people could attend, other than me just doing some off hours stuff. So as for today, I'll just be doing this in the moment, as I was feeling it, knowing that like I was pretty passionate about the subject today. I do have a other podcast outline that I'm at the moment generating. It's supposed to be like a new job, like talk kind of podcast. So that'll be for the future, and I'll make sure that comes out either. Okay, I need a promise today because if I don't do it today, I'm not gonna do it for a long time. So I'll make sure to have that podcast planned for either this Sunday at like the normal scheduled hours, which we're not really scheduled anymore, but either at the past like scheduled Sunday at sevens, or probably next Sunday. So should be one of the Sundays at which we're going to be talking about that. And I'll try to invite some other people to have different perspectives on here because my perspective definitely gets old for the brand. I'm sure everyone's enjoyed Alon's perspectives more than more than mine. I think when I'm talking with people, usually I think my perspective usually shines the most, but maybe it's because I try to make it as heard as much as possible, which it's annoying, but I think it's my moral obligation to share like things that I'm passionate about, and I think it is to everyone else's too. So, I'm only following that pattern for what I think is morally right in that sense, because I think the perspective can be useful for other people, and not everyone feels not everyone feels that same obligation, but it is something that I feel. Okay, I think that makes it past our intro, but for the main topic of today, we're going to be talking about being with the right people. And there were a couple situations that came up that made me think about this topic as something to do. Firstly, namely, I very recently did a interview at a volunteering position for a crisis hotline. And so my job for this organization would be to chat with people who call in. This is supposed to be a demographic of people who aren't particularly in a crisis in the moment. They should be on the recovery side of their like either depression or suicidal thought crisis. So they should be like attending some sort of pattern for getting help for themselves. But yeah, I went through the interview. The person, there were two people interviewing me actually. One of them was a younger lady, and then the other one was like slightly older. I think she was, what is she? She might have been a year older than me actually. That's weird to think about. Yeah, she said she had like the only naming statistic for why I would know she's a year older than me is because she said she wanted to live 107. Or no, she's not a year older than me. She's like 4 years older than me. Oops, I can't do math. But No, she said like 107 years is how long she needs to live in order to live through 3 centuries. And I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, that's a ambitious goal for sure. But the reason why that came up is because there was a question revolving around like what your plans for the future are, and how long you plan to like live. I think that's kind of the gist of the question of what that was supposed to be going for. The problem with that was I think I answered that question along the lines of when I die is when I die, which I think is the humble way of like answering that. It's like live as much as you want or try to, but there's no guarantees that you're going to live like a long life, fruitful life for 107 years. It's very ambitious. I don't even know if I'm going to live it past like 80. It's hard to know. So, but anyways, that's how I answered the question. And the interviewer just kind of rebutted that. Was a little shocked. Not too happy with some of the other answers that I had to give either. So it was it wasn't really a good fit. This is someone that when I had answered specific questions about like how I think I should deal with people who are contemplating suicide, I gave like a pretty genuinely honest answer as to how I thought that should be handled. So the answer formatted, or at least like came out to be something like this. It's that you can't disprove that the conditions at which they believe that suicide is worth it is wrong. I don't think you can justify that they're in the wrong for thinking that way, per se. The current mentality and the different details that they have focused on are legitimate reasons for them to believe that suicide would be the right decision for them. But the problem that, or the flip side that I brought up in my answer was that even though it may be justified, it's still inconsiderate of the idea that that person has meaning and value in other dimensions that they just can't see at the moment. And so being able to listen and honor the value of, or I guess the perspective of thinking that their life isn't worth it, came from a justifiable assortment of perspectives that got them to that place. But there's that perspective is inconsiderate of other dimensions that should prove that your life is worth it. And that's kind of how I phrased the question. And if I'm being honest, I don't even know what kind of answer she was expecting. She called that like a red flag answer. And I was like, okay. Do we just see like depression in different lights? Do we see like suicide victims in like different lights? What's the right answer for that? You know, like it's the problem with me per se, with going for volunteer opportunities like that, is I answer these questions like as honest as I can. And I think the answers that I provide are contextual to the perspective that I have about those people. And I think a lot of my own perceptions about those different contexts are way different at how other people view those contexts. I think there's a standardized answer, social answer, societal answer to those different contexts, but doesn't actually have, it's not actually the same. I think they're a lot different. It's not normal or standard to believe that this person has come to a just conclusion about taking their own life, and rather should be like fought against to the highest degree possible, if that's like the normal societal answer. I don't actually know what that answer is supposed to be. I just know I got it wrong. The different answers that I proposed through the different situations that I was asked about, I don't think I answered very well on any of them in relationship to what the interviewer wanted me to answer or how to answer those. So, yeah, it was a great call by them. Honestly, I'm very relieved that they made the right call for that, because that would have been pretty awful if they thought I was a good fit despite the conflicting opinions about what like depression is and how to deal with suicidal people. Like another example about how that interview went. So they'd asked me about what I do when I experience a setback. And I think my immediate answer was, I don't usually experience setbacks or anxiety. It was a joint question about like setbacks and anxiety. It's either they were joint or they were two separate questions. Either way, I answered likewise, is that I don't experience like setbacks or anxiety per se. And when I do, it's usually handled within a day and pretty well. Like I push through responsibilities that I need to when I experience setbacks, and I take approaches a little differently. If a setback occurs, then I just rephrase the problem to be something that's more approachable, something that I can actually complete within the timeline that I was expected to complete the previous situation, and then let other people know of what the situation is. So it was, when I was thinking about setbacks in that context, I was thinking about like outwork. So like I deal with like setbacks all the time, is what it is. But in terms of anxiety, I very rarely feel anxious. So that one I stuck by pretty hard. And I think the interviewer was like, "You never feel anxious, huh?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I tend to everything pretty well. I can't remember the last time that I was particularly anxious to where I was, very self-conscious and believing and visibly, physically shaking at how anxious I was about a situation. I don't think I was ever like that." So, and she was just in disbelief. It's like our own perceptions about these different topics were just conflicting to where I knew I probably wouldn't have been a great fit for her anyways. I think the other interviewer, who was around my age, maybe a little bit older or even a little bit younger, I don't even know. The one who was on the younger side of it, younger than the older interviewer, I think she kind of knew where I was coming from. But I also think she knew I was answering those questions wrong. So, you know what? Maybe it's for the best that I wasn't hired or like brought onto the team. But yeah, that was my volunteering experience. But we definitely butted heads about like what it meant to be depressed, like what it meant to experience like anxiety, or how to help people the right way. Like I take a very you would call a Jordan Peterson approach. And I think there's a lot of psychologists out there who also believe in the same thing, but the methodology about achieving that stuff is way different. I think as a younger male who's gone through like the whole series of like Jordan Peterson's self-help guide, I think that's influenced a lot of my own perspective about how to tackle like depression and keeping a healthy mental state. So that's where that is. I don't think that perspective's very widespread acceptable though. But that's the thing. I don't know what is. I don't know what works for other people the same way that it's worked like Jordan Peterson's like methodologies or self-help in general has been for me. So I don't think those were the right people. And I think it showed in the different values that we had about I guess, yeah, like our own interpretations as to what like improving your mental health would look like and how to help other people who are struggling through that. So for sure, it would have been draining for me to talk with someone who valued something else. I don't think it would have been the wrong place for me to be at had it been like equally accepted by the other person to interpret my ideas as something potentially solving the problem. I just felt like I was dismissed as someone who could like help solve the problem or provide services that would that would align with the methods that the crisis line was giving out. I have a couple other situations that more were like previous people that I was with. And this is about a woman from New York. If she's listening in, then welcome. It's nice to, every time I think about this person, I feel like reaching out, and I just knowing the different details about how things have happened and changed over time. I haven't heard this from this person in months, mind you. Incredibly smart, incredible lady. My God. Probably smarter than I am, if I'm being honest. Articulate abilities up there. Kind, caring. She knows how to make people feel listened to and spend the time with people in the right light. Yeah, I had a great time learning about this person. I know she's listened in on the podcast every once in a while. I won't expose her more than that, though. And it's sad because I can't help but feel like I've been ghosted. Because the last couple times that I've reached out to this person, I haven't been met with a response. And despite all the positive interactions that I've had with them, it's a situation that reminds me of a different person that I was with in middle school and high school, where there was just one turning point where I did something wrong. It was very obvious I did something wrong because the other person verbally said that it was harmful to our relationship, our friendship. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And then I tried to continue reaching back out for the friendship to continue on. And it came to a point where I was just ghosted after that. And it was hard to deal with because how do you keep remembering, somehow you reminisce, or rather I reminisce over a past friendship that I once had with said person. And you kind of see that person as a source of meaning. Is that what you do? When you develop relationships with people, do you see them as meaningful? What's the difference between meeting someone from the first time and then seeing someone for the 50th time on your own terms? Do you see them as positive opportunities? You see them as someone to look out for? It's hard to know. Anyways, I've been ghosted by two people, two different occasions, by people who I consider to be incredible. And I think this is different from understanding who you surround yourself with, which I know is a podcast topic that we talked about, I think 2 or 3 podcasts ago. But this one is knowing the incredible people who don't want to be with you. You're not as incredible enough to them to where you're worth their time. It's a pretty painful realization.
All right, sorry, my father walked in. But yeah, I think it's painful to deal with when someone else doesn't reciprocate your feelings of friendship. I think it's, I don't know, I've been rejected a couple times, I guess, but the pain from the rejection isn't necessarily the same as the pain from like a friendship, being rejected in a friendship. I think there, I don't know, is there more? Well, yeah. I guess with like a relationship part, it's a little different because volatile environment to begin with. I think you more expect to be rejected in a friendship than you are in a, or sorry, more in a relationship than you are to be in a friendship. So I think there's definitely harder feelings with knowing that you're just someone that you don't want to, knowing that you are someone who someone else considers to not be worth your time, and someone that you just don't see romantic compatibility with. Definitely two different statements. And the ones that I've been rejected as a friend at some point have definitely hurt the most, comparably. So it's definitely rough. But I don't necessarily know how to interpret those feelings anymore, because at some point I just said, well, at least with the one from middle school, high school, I've said, that was a whole situation that I dealt with like years after, and I don't really have to return to that idea. But it is a reoccurring process per se, and the ghosting aspect of it. And it's hard to demand. It's hard to demand compliance from someone else in terms of, or I guess communication from someone else, when there's no obvious obligation for them to do that other than like moral obligation. And it's, wow, you know what? I didn't actually think about that. Imagine someone being with someone else who doesn't have the moral obligation to respond back to you. That is such a, ugh. Wow. That's essentially what's happening when you're ghosted. There's definitely people who I've met who I've given the benefit of the doubt in the case that they just don't have the communication capacity at the time to be able to respond back to me. And there is one person like that. She knows who I'm talking about. Love you to death. And it hurts sometimes, but I do understand where you're coming from. She'll know who I'm talking about. Or she'll know that I'm talking about her. So, but yeah, it's hard to interpret if that's like the right person to be with, because there's so many different dimensions at which you need to consider. And the positive times that I've enjoyed with the other person, is that enough of a memory to think positively about someone else? Or do you think about the now and the new behaviors of today to make the realization that the ghosting effect is something you should internalize in your relationship with this other person? So, anyways, that's going to conclude at least my background, my story perspectives. I actually went ahead and took a look at an article that describes on being with the right people. It says, or rather, the actual article title is 5 Ways to Meet the Right People. And I don't know why I searched this up. This just seemed like something I could add on to the review, but I will admit I did learn something about it. And I think I have my own opinions about the different points that were made in here. So the first point of this article, which, you know what, before I even do that, I should list it properly. So it's written by Mark Chernoff. I have the article listed within the outline today. So you'll be able to click on it within the markdown file and then read it for yourself as well. Because I definitely might misrepresent it because I didn't particularly read all of it, but I did read like parts of it. The first way to meet the right person or meet the right people is learn to enjoy your own company. And I think that's fairly strange to list off as one of the first ways to do it. I think it's the way that Mark describes this is like a moment to self-reflect on the situation, the network situation that you're a part of. And so being able to take a step back and then realize the different dimensions at which you need to get source, or that you need to like find sources for, in terms of how your network should operate with you and how you should operate with your network. That's kind of what this first step is supposed to be. The second step is getting in touch. And so this one actually takes a look at reevaluating perhaps your past relationships, past friendships with other people, to then make decisions on, or rather like just being able to connect with people you may have once had some connection with to begin with. I think reaching back out to those people can be resourceful. So, step 3 is be generous and help others. I'm actually taking the time to read this one though, so excuse my pausing for the moment. Interesting. So I think this is a presentation point in the sense that you need to outwardly expose your ability to help other people in order to grow your network. Showing that you have genuine interest in other people is what this is supposed to be. I wonder why Mark thinks this is a good avenue for meeting the right people, though. Because you could attract a leech if you're just proposing yourself as someone who can be a active support member. So I'm wondering why he decided to throw that out there. Way number 4, join an active community of like-minded people. And I even put like the bullet pointed list from the article into the into the outline for today. First one is like finding people who are like-minded on personal development, spirituality, blogging, software development, graphic design, acoustic guitar, meditation, yoga, cooking, etc. Father walked in again to give me some chicken. Nice. Yeah, so I think, well, okay. Finding other people who have like-minded interests, I think is almost a no-brainer. So, but definitely something that should be included because the commonality is going to improve how you meet the right people, I guess. People who make you feel included. Reach out to leaders and mentors. That's number 5. You know, the actual antidote that comes along with this wave 5 is somewhat inspiring because I think it describes a situation where Mark was in, where he needed to, or where I think he was around like-minded people, but these were people who were like leaders or mentors and
people that you might be a little more intimidated to reach out to. And I think the moral of the story here, through the antidote, is that you can reach out to everyone because they're all just humans too, and regardless of like their status or position in comparison to who you were at the event, or who you are in terms of the company, or who you are like to anyone. It's like we're all humans, and you got to remember that connections can start anywhere and with anyone, regardless of who, like what status they hold at these institutions. And that's something that I should probably remind myself every once in a while. You can continue to like reach up to people of higher power. Usually, it's all you're doing is just making the invitation to have a chat. So that's pretty much, that's all you're doing. So I think that might be a great way to be able to extend your network, to get you more opportunities that might improve your life than you might know. So definitely an inspiring last way to meet the right people. Okay. All right. I think we'll call that done for today. But yeah, I just wanted to throw my recent thoughts about these different situations out there. And then I guess the reviewing the last tips was kind of helpful for me. So I'm glad I did that. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. I'll make sure to have the job check-in outline in a little bit. So I'll see you guys next time.